Okay, so here is a kind of very simplistic DNS setup, right? So let's just say that Namecheap are both a domain registrar and our DNS provider. And um, so we have a client that needs to figure out, how to get to our backend. So it says, hey, DNS, where is the backend? The backend's like, it's right over there. So cool. And it connects with HTTPS. We'll just pretend we already have a certificate there. Well, say somebody gets into your Namecheap account, right? And tell you what, a lot of small businesses, not a lot of thought is put into securing these accounts. And I don't mean just small, like, mom and pop shop that isn't a high value target. I mean, like a lot of places that you would think would know better don't secure their DNS. I mean, this happened even to Linus Tech Tips, right? They got their domain registrar hacked. And it's very easy because what is one of the first things you do when you start a business? You buy a domain. It's probably under your personal email, which is not going to have the same security settings as as a corporate email very often. So let's just say that they get into Namecheap, right? And they change the record for the backend to their shady server, right? So when Let's Encrypt, so the shady server does a certificate sign-in request, and Let's Encrypt, well, it doesn't know the difference between your backend and the shady. It just responds to that request to say, okay, you're here. We see your DNS record, and it goes back and says, here you go, shady. Here's your certificate. Now, until that gets noticed, and let me tell you, it's not going to get noticed for a while in a whole lot of environments because people just don't think about this stuff. Until that gets noticed, they can just do TLS termination between you and your backend. They just act as a TLS terminating proxy, and they swoop up all of your traffic. And if this server is powerful enough and there's not all that much, load, they could, it could go unnoticed for a very long time. Worse still is if you have a DNS provider like DigitalOcean that will sign a wildcard cert for you. They could obviously get wildcard certs, and they could do this to your other services, and they could pivot around your whole setup like that and just do TLS termination by changing DNS records. Now you might say, Noah, but I'm very careful with my certificate trust settings. I only use my own certificate authority that is very access controlled, and I don't use any Let's Encrypt certs. Well, okay, let me ask you then. Do all of your clients do the same thing, right? Do they have very particular certificate trust settings? I'm willing to bet that they do not. I'm willing to bet that most browsers out there are not going to respect whatever certificate configuration that you're using. So unless you have, say, all of your workstations are enrolled in MDM, and for your domain they have very particular certificate trust settings, and you can verify that at no point is the CA certificates package in any of your client apps, right? Remember, in a microservices world, you might be having things communicate with each other. Does your Node.js app, when it downloads its dependencies and stuff like that, require CA certificates to be installed? I bet it does. Same thing with Python, right? Does pip require, when you build the Docker container, does it require that you install CA certificates? Yeah, so you've just added that whole public CA certificate trust chain into your system, and anyone who can provision a Let's Encrypt cert on your behalf really and can maintain some discrete control of your DNS provider can do TLS termination. And this is basically one of my contentions as to why I don't like TLS, the way the ecosystem has developed as a general rule, because there are so many places it can break, and very often it's just waiting out there to happen, and people have no idea. They think that they've set up, for example, their certificate trust settings to not trust public CAs like Let's Encrypt. Well, it's not the case, because one of their packages installed CA certificates or CA-certificate in Python, for example, as a dependency, and boom, now you have this whole trust chain and your supply chain